We should be right now, aren't we? We should be ready to go. Yes, hello everybody. Welcome to, I don't know, I'd like to say the first of a new series, but I'm not sure how it's going to go. But welcome to what may be the first and only episode, or maybe the first in many, of Only 8-Bit, where myself and I'm going to never get this right, my very, very good friend, Sean from Retro Games Revived, are going to share our love of 8-Bit. And I'd like to point out before we start, because there's bound to be somebody who watch this somewhere, this isn't live. Okay, this isn't live. You had this problem before. Now, you can see the TMB logo in the background. For those of you who know, me and Sean do a semi-regular podcast now, don't we, on here, with some of our other friends. But me and Sean have a real interest in old 8-bit computers. And that's really what we're going to talk about. I know there are other people who've done things like this, and we're not trying to muscle in on that territory. It's just something me and Sean have talked about for quite some time. And we'd like to do our own variation on it. And we thought, what better way to do this, to start something like this off, is to share with you as many experiences and memories that we can do within the next, hopefully, 60 minutes. Maybe a little bit more. Depends how carried away we get. It could be for 3 days yet. We don't know. Hopefully they will relate to your own experiences. We'd like you to share them with us in the comments below. And if we get an interest and we enjoy doing it, then hopefully we may do some more of these. We may even ask people to come on and share their memories. We'd like to talk about certain systems, game genres, software houses, developments, etc. And it might act as a sort of a tool for people who may or may not be familiar with this sort of thing. I realise I've now talked for nearly 2 minutes without Sean saying anything. Hello, Sean. How are you?
Hello, mate. Hello, everybody. I mean, like Russ says, it is a massive passion of ours. And, I know there is quite a few people, particularly in the community, that do like the 8-bit systems as well. They do like to see the 8-bit pickups, or as many people call them, the dusty old tapes.
two dusty old tapes sitting here. We pick up.
But yeah, it'll be nice to talk about it because, like it says, we do the podcast, but a lot of the time we maybe just scan over, a few of us, mine and Russ's 8-bit memories or stories. So this enables us to, directly talk about, like I said, the 8-bits, the passions. So it's going to be good.
And the memories and all the experiences and perhaps games which we have to remember there are people younger than us, don't we? When you always talk to people about games, and so you have to remember that we're all from different age groups. You and I are pretty much from more or less the same age group within about 18 months or so. But there are people who we fraternise with and we talk to have absolutely no idea, no passion for this sort of thing. And I've always said, if we can convert a few people here and there along the way, there's a way of doing it. So I'm going to kick things off, and I'm just going to throw it to you first of all, and just sort of say, what was your first, real experience of playing, or experiencing an 8-bit system?
Well, to be honest, I always I know a lot of people who know me will know that the Spectrum 48K, the original, the little rubber keyboard Spectrum, was really, it was the first microcomputer, but that gaming for me never really started with that. It was the Binatones, the old little Binatone system, the orange and black. We had one orange and black thing, and it was basically the Pong style of games, and I think it had about 6 different ways of playing it, either with single player, double player, 2 sticks either side. They had football and tennis built into them, but they were basically just sticks on the square.
They were all the same game, weren't they? They were just called something completely different. With like more sticks, just to say. So rather than playing tennis with the 2 of you, you said football, there'd be like 3 of you on the thing, but you control all 3 at the same time. It was strange.
And that's where it started from. Funnily enough, the controls on those were fantastic. They had a little, the paddle. They were basically just paddles. They worked really well. They were pretty nifty things. But, they were quite limited. and then obviously at Christmas, I forget which year it was, but the Spectrum had pretty much only just been released. Yeah, and I got my ZX Spectrum, and that is where my love for gaming kicked off, and it's never relinquished. Really, I've stuck through, a few of the 8-bit systems onwards and upwards to modern day, and I think, because it's weird, because you look at some of your friends, your past friends that you grew up with, and they may have moved on to football, rugby, or other hobbies. And obviously myself and yourself, Russ, we've grown up and we've stuck with the computers, the gaming, and it's still good. I still love it.
It stays in your blood, doesn't
Yeah,
it? That
it does.
it's very difficult to shift it, because I've dipped
It
in and
is.
out over the years. But I mean, my first experience was different to yours, because you actually got a system. When
Yeah.
I grew up with the VCS, the Atari VCS, and I didn't get to play on an 8-bit system until I went round to a friend's house. And my exposure to these, first of all, was Commodore 64, so you were Spectrum.
Yeah.
And I was exposed to Commodore 64. A friend of mine used to live up the road, and we used to go around there quite a lot. I grew up with this guy at school, and we played youth cricket and cricket, through senior level and stuff like that for a number of years. But that period, probably, I'd say 84 to 88, maybe, something like that. Was constantly around there playing all these games, and of course, they were completely different to the VCS ones. I mean, the VCS ones were, very playable, but compared to these sort of things, they were completely different. Sonically, they were different. Graphically, they were different. Everything. Loading off tape, because you use, if you've got the VCS, put the cartridge in, turn it on, gone. With obviously tapes, you have to sort of sit there and wait for it to load. And one of the great things I used to do was you go around, I'll pick a game out of all these games, and you say, oh, I'll have them. Oh, that doesn't usually load. Well, I'll try it anyway. And of course, you sit there for 10 minutes, you're waiting, and all of a sudden it's just like, hey, it doesn't work. Hey, it doesn't work. We'll try it. I'm not trying it again. We'll try something else. But that was the joy. You sort of sit there and wait for it to happen, and it never usually does. But of course, the thing is, nowadays you don't have to do that.
No.
Which probably makes 8-bit quite more accessible, because you can do it off audio, DAT files, various different files for different systems, and it's instant. But if you're a hard-nosed, grizzled old veteran like me, there is no more joy than sitting there and actually loading the things properly and waiting for them to be done as they should be.
It's funny because, I mean, I was thinking earlier about the tape loading, and at the time, it was frustrating, it was annoyance, but I don't know, there was something a little bit charming about it. But I mean, it's funny because I thought to myself, why did they used to bother making you wait for the loading screen to load up? Just load the game up.
Yeah,
I'm happy with a blank screen. Just get the game loaded up quicker.
Well,
but saying that, it was nice to see, a nice picture gradually emerge on the screen. And like the Commodore 64, you sometimes you would have music to listen to.
Well, that's it. But you've got that. You've got to keep people's attention, haven't you? I mean,
Yeah.
I, from my point of view, I thought the idea of a loading screen was fantastic. If people don't know what we're talking about, luckily, by chance, I have something here to show, which is very lucky because it's been sitting here for a couple of days. So it's happened to be here. So if I show you this, which is Smash TV, this is a Spectrum game.
Yeah.
So what you would do with the loading screen, you would get some sort of art variation of that.
Yeah.
Okay, and that would sort of like scan across screen, load, like you sort of sit there and like a typewriter. But of course, people these days won't know what typewriters are, so we've got to try and move anything that zigzag goes across the screen like that would build that picture. And you'd sit there and watch it. Now, as you mentioned, Sean, if it was, say, Commodore, or you'd have some loading music. I can't speak for the other system because I didn't get much exposure to Spectrum and Amstrad. I'll talk about that again shortly. So you get that coming on. occasionally, I think it was Elite games, wasn't it? Anything by Elite, they'd have like a little game, wouldn't they, while the game was loading up?
Yeah,
Yeah, like a space. Was it Space Invaders type thing?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So just to while the loading was going on, you'd at least keep yourself occupied. But of course, there was all that
yeah.
danger that once the loading screen finished and it disappeared, that was the key moment. Right, what's going to happen next? Is it going to load? Are you going to get into the game or not? I've got a copy of Salamander on the C64, the Hit Squad version, and mine does everything it should do, and then goes to a black screen and nothing happens. I used to think this game didn't load properly, and then one day I loaded it. I thought, why isn't it loading again? I just pressed the fire button, and the game started.
All right.
It was weird. And then I think I got Slap Fight as well on the Hit Squad.
Yeah.
That loads and plays absolutely fine, but there's something wrong with it because the first level lasted about 20 minutes. I ain't that bad at games, so it's ridiculous. But before we get there, so you'd have that. So that will come on to entertain you. Now, this is the sort of thing that, again, I appreciate. The purpose of this is to try to, share our memories, educate people at the same time as well. You may not know what we're talking about in terms of tape, so I'm something might stumble across it. This is a tape. Yeah. And you might think this is daft and me telling you how to suck eggs, but I worked with somebody who had absolutely no idea how this worked. Okay,
Really?
a couple of years ago, he was only, about 15 years younger than me, and I got somebody who's dropped off to work for me. And he said, "Well, how does that work?" Then I said, "What do you mean? How does it work?" He said, "Well, how does that work?" I said, "Well, you put that in a tape player, you press play, and then it loads. That's how you play the game. That's how it was. So literally standard audio tape, which people may recognise, and that's what it is. And they had various things. And like I said, sometimes it would load, and sometimes it wouldn't. Now, so your first exposure to 8-bit was a Spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what drew you in once you got it? And sort of anchored itself to your psyche, as it were.
I think the main thing were the games. Obviously, we got I think there were packing games, survival, make a chip, and some other rubbish.
The world's most commonest games that you could get.
Yeah.
If people, that they are now the equivalent of FIFA, aren't they? They're literally the equivalent of FIFA games. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're still are. 40 years later, Sean, they are still readily available in giant piles. Yeah.
You buy a bundle off eBay and you're guaranteed to get one of them games in there. It's like if you look for a Commodore bundle, you're going to get Mike Reed's Pop Quiz.
Great game.
The light gun games. Gangster, is it? Or something like
Gangster.
Time Traveller.
Yeah.
And then
Typing shooter and
shooter.
Yeah, that's always crops up everywhere, doesn't it? Yeah. And it'd be the same with the Amstrad stuff as well. The Amsoft stuff would be ready. And then there was that range of Spectrum games like Mini Golf and I can't remember. Oh, Mummy, that was another one. That was, loads of these knocking around. They're the most common games to find. If it tells you they're rare and collectible, they're not.
They're wrong.
They're not. They're wrong. Because I thought when I got Make a Chip for the first time, I thought I've never seen this before. This must be really, really rare. Until I sort of did a bit of research and found out that quite literally they are people just give them away.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
I mean, survival. I must admit. We did, myself and my dad, we did play that for ages. It was, it's quite a basic game where you've got a certain animal and you have to basically, as the name suggests, you've got to survive. You've got to pick up bits to eat and you've got to evade anything that's going to hunt you. A simple game, but I suppose at the time when you haven't got much else to play, then you made the most of it. But we did get Orisco skiing, and anybody who's owned a Spectrum will know that game. And it's it's a good little game. It is. Crossing the road.
You cross the road, haven't you?
Cross the road, and then the little skiing section, rinse and repeat.
The concept of that is terrible. Run across the road so you can buy some skis to go skiing with, then ski all the way down the hill, and then go back across the road again so you can buy some more skis, which you've already got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, they satisfied me for a little while, and then I can't remember exactly. It might have been my mum. She came home once with this Marks and Spencer's pack of games.
Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah,
wow.
Sorry, St Michael. It wasn't obviously it wasn't a Marks and Spencer brand, but it was under the St Michael label. And there were two games in that pack: Frozen Penguin and Fearless Frank, which you may have heard me mention before. Great little games. They're all. Fearless Frank is a platformer. Frozen Penguin's one of those. It's a clone of one of those arcade games. You got a little penguin. You push blocks to kill enemies and kill all the enemies. Yeah. Pengo, is it? Yeah.
Pengo, into yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically a clone that, but it pretty decent little clone. The one game though that stands out mainly that introduced me to the Spectrum of Trash, man. God, we spent hours on that. Me and my dad. God, yeah. It's good though because have you ever played it, Russ?
I don't think I have, but I've always steered away from games which try and use it or mimic real life. And you know, if I played that when I was young, it probably would have put me off going to work ever. Games should be for enjoyment, not to sort of simulate work environments. You know what I mean? But they're very popular. Things like Jet Wash Simulator and all that stuff that's come out now.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Trash Man, what quirky is you had to empty the bins, take it back. If you went straight from the path onto the grass, usually a little dog would come out and chase you. You had to get out of the way. If you managed to empty the bin correctly, a little person would come to the door and they'd offer you in for a cup of tea, and they'd give you a tip. Obviously, just points, but yeah, it was. I mean, I suppose at the time that was a cutting edge. That was a AAA title.
yeah, probably not wrong. Yeah,
absolutely brilliant. And they're the games that really set me off on me 8-bit journey. And then subsequently, then my friend had got the C64. Absolutely fell in love with that. And then at some point, I managed to get hold of a Commodore. Well, people remember the story that I've told about my dad wrecking me ZX Spectrum. He blames me. I blame him. And then he wants to come on with a Commodore 64, and I was really happy. So, yeah, what more could I say? And then the Commodore 64 journey, it was equally as good as the ZX Spectrum. I know I collect more predominantly C64 than Spectrum, but I did have an equal love for the Spectrum as well. Both computers, I thought they were absolutely brilliant, and they really were part of me growing up, the 8-bit days.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's you're right about that escapism and stuff, because back then you looked at those games, and what you got to remember is you don't get what we have in modern gaming now, where you get a game and you can watch a trailer for the game. Never thought to use that when we talk about the games. Very strange to talk about the same sort of field as films, but now you can go on to PlayStation Network, or what it's called these days, and you can preview a game and it'll give you all this, or you can go on YouTube and download a video. But that back then, you had the back of the box. And that told you what the game was, and you had to use your imagination a little bit. In some cases, there was nothing on the back of the box apart from some writing.
No.
So you were literally going off the artwork. I mean, we talk about this. I will keep referring to this to illustrate the points I'm trying to make. But yeah, you'd look at that. Some cases you'd have a front cover of a game, and that was all you had to go on.
Yeah.
Now, this one does have some screenshots on the back, which no one's going to be able to see because they're too bloody small. But sometimes you would just get the writing on particularly the older games. You just get the writing, so you'd have to go off that to
Mm.
try and understand what sort of game it's going to be. You could look at that. It's going to be some sort of like space futuristic game, which it is. So you wouldn't have that, but again, you had to use that imagination, and because of the way technology was back then, things were programmed like that. So it was never going to live up to what was on the back of the box as such, but you would make that what it was.
Yeah.
So Orisco skiing, for example, yeah, it's a little blob who crosses a road and then goes in a very, very badly designed ski course. But that, he says, well, it's in Orisco skiing. That's exactly what he does. He crosses the road, buys some skis, and skiing.
Yeah.
But that was it. That was the whole attraction to it. And you mentioned Trash Man. I mean, we joke about it now, but it's a game about going to work and stuff. But that's what people made games about. There was Hover Bother, wasn't there, about the lawn, mowing lawns.
Mowing lawns.
Mowing lawns, yeah. You wouldn't go and do something like that. But then you see, there are games we mentioned, Jet Wash Simulator, a Power Wash Simulator, I think it's called, isn't it? And was it a Postal? I think you played Postal, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like a walk. You're a postman. Anything more straightforward than that. But for me, playing those C64 games, it was all about. We played a lot of sports titles back then. Me and my wife, we were quite into sports, so we played things like Leaderboard, which was golf.
Yeah.
Love that. Love playing Leaderboard. Emlyn Hughes' football, great football game.
Yeah.
Anything that got sports into it. I remember there was a basketball game called Basket Master. And we played quite a bit of those. But you started to understand a bit more exposure at that time to arcades, where the big games were, and all of a sudden, the home systems are then flooded with a raft of arcade conversions and things. And I mean, your journey is interesting. You went from Spectrum to Commodore 64. I only had the exposure to Commodore 64, and I think I played in the Spectrum twice ever.
Really, yeah.
Yeah, twice ever. Once it was somebody's birthday party. We were meeting there before we went to the cinema to watch Rocky IV. This tells you how old this was. And he got a Spectrum. I'd never seen one before. I was like, this is weird. And of course, the Spectrum was, again, for people who don't know, was limited in terms of colour and sound.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was a 48K version, which I guess that's the one you had, 48K.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So the 128, which came out afterwards, was a bit more powerful. You made use of a different sound chip, but when you put block, I always say Spectrums are black and white. It's not entirely true. They were quite colourful. The graphics were very well drawn, but they had a colour clash issue.
Colour clash, yeah.
And of course, people said the Commodore 64 was basically sort of brown, grey, and blue in terms of graphics, and that was it. But they were a bit more colourful, and the music was much better. And then the Amstrad, which I never knew anybody with an Amstrad at all.
No, I didn't.
Was a completely different thing altogether. It was somewhere between, sound-wise, somewhere about the same level as a Spectrum, or a little bit better than Spectrum when it comes to 64. But in terms of the graphics, it was really vibrant, almost eye-watering.
Yeah, it had a lovely colour palette on it. It did Amstrad. And like you said, the sound chip, I think it was in between the Spectrum and the Commodore. It's baffling, really, why it didn't do, better than it should have done, really. Because it had a bit of both, like I said, the Spectrum and the Commodore. And I think certain things of the Amstrad programming let it down a bit. I mean, I'm not a programmer, so I don't know the technicalities of it, but scrolling, I think, was difficult to pull off on the Amstrad, wasn't it, as compared to the Spectrum and Commodore, for whatever reason, I don't know.
Especially if you try to play, Commodore 64 was probably predominantly between the three. I mean, they've all got their own strengths and weaknesses, but if you play, say, for example, a platformer or a shooter on the Commodore 64, let's say a left to right horizontal scroller, the Amstrad, not always, and I've been corrected on this in the past, I've been wrong, but not always, but quite a lot of the time, the screen would sort of you get to the end of the screen, and then the screen would like move like that,
Shuffle
and then
along.
onto the
Yeah.
next one.
Yeah.
And I don't think you had that problem on the Spectrum. But I probably not played on enough of it. But they all had their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
But as you said, I didn't know anybody with an Amstrad. I saw them in the shops.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking it was straight because, again, all slightly different setup as well. The Spectrum was sold as a home computer originally, and incredibly probably the cheapest system you could buy at home. The Commodore 64 was probably pitched somewhere a lot more as a home computer,
Mm.
and then eventually because it'll become more predominantly to do with gaming, but a more higher level than the Spectrum. And the Amstrad sort of slots somewhere in between, but you could only buy an Amstrad with a monitor. And it was either a green monitor or a colour monitor, and the difference was £100. And of course, well, why do you want a green screen? But of course, that was the way the Amstrad was made and sold, as the power supply isn't in the actual computer itself; it's in the monitor. So if you haven't got a monitor, and this is a word of warning to people because I didn't know this. If you wanted to get into 8-bit systems and you want to get yourself an Amstrad, don't just buy an Amstrad computer on its own with nothing, because it won't work. You can get the leads for it, but unless you've got the monitor to plug into it, it's no good. So you'd have to either get a separate power supply, which I've got. I've got one of these separate power supplies. And again, if we get enough interest, we can show all these things off and show how these things work. But that they're also different, and great arguments were caused on playgrounds and things. But yes, as I said, two goes on the Spectrum ever until I got one many years later, and then I said an Amstrad. You got more chance of finding an MSX.
This rivalry is still existent today.
It does. It does. It cuts deep with people, even so. Nowadays,
yeah. You've got your Spectrum stalwarts, and then you've got the Commodore fans. But yeah, it's still going to this day. Good banter.
It does, and it's run all the way through because you had that. Then you had briefly the Amiga and ST camps. You're either one or the other. Then when you got the Sega and Nintendo, it's exactly the same. And now you've got Xbox and PlayStation. So, there's always going to be a rival, hasn't there? I mean, I should mention Nintendo is still going, which is 3 of them now. Of course, it's not just the 2 of them, but it is. So for me, it's when I discovered arcades after that, and then you'd be looking for these games to come out onto the home systems. That was what that was the whole thing, and that was what software houses got behind back then. They knew that big target markets, particularly Christmas, that they'd be wanting to rush out. And rush is probably quite a key word here, because a lot of stuff was rushed out. I mean, people can complain nowadays about games not being finished and then being released, and then patches having to come out to make sure that they work properly. Back then, games came out and they were broken.
Yeah.
And that was it. They were substandard in terms of conversion. So softwares were trying to get all the big arcade games, sign them all up and get them all out for the big markets at Christmas. And that's what you wanted to see. Now, you must remember, again, arcade machines, these great big sort of things, which probably you can run on your mobile phone nowadays. It's ridiculous the way things have moved on. We're like the pinnacle, that they were the untouchable sort of thing. You were never going to emulate that in the mid-'80s at home. No way whatsoever. No. But they tried, bless them. They did try.
They did try.
They did try. I mean, it's. But you have to, and I suppose really, as a consumer, you have to set your expectations accordingly.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with somebody about this some time ago, and quite rightly they said, well, the back of the box here says it's arcade perfect or a great arcade conversion. I played the arcade game; it's nothing like it. Well, yeah, it isn't. It isn't. But some would argue that there are various conversions knocking around on the 8-bit systems that were probably, in terms of gameplay, and enjoyment equal to what they were in the arcades. Might not look the same, might not sound the same, but that core element was still there. And that's why I love playing arcade games on the home computers, because you get, you see them make, Outrun's coming out, Operation Wolf's coming out, all these big hulking arcade games. So, I mean, did you find that yourself? Did you then go to arcades and then wait for the games to come out for home? And you think, I know one of your favourite games is Space Harrier. So, if you'd seen Space Harrier in the arcade, I dare say you'd have been seriously excited as a young 25-year-old when Space Harrier came out on the 8-bit systems. You'd rush out and get it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the arcades were, like I said, the pinnacle of gaming at that time. And for the 8-bits to emulate, it just weren't going to happen. But as a young kid, as a young lad, you wouldn't know that, because obviously I didn't know anything about programming, didn't know anything about, really an arcade conversion. I just thought, Space Harrier coming to the Commodore 64. I may have seen an advert in a magazine, probably Zap or Crash, whichever system I had. And yeah, the expectation, it would have been high, most certainly. And the excitement would have come crashing down once it had loaded up and I'd press start. Like you said, the trouble, I think, with a lot of the arcade conversions for the 8-bit computers was time. The publisher, like you said, they wanted it out. They wanted to cash in on this big tie-in, this big conversion. And the programmers were, unfortunately, had been rushed. And I had read somewhere a programmer talking about that, and he said that they could have done it better. They know for a fact they could have done it better, but they just weren't given the chance. The people higher up didn't care what it looked like; they just wanted it out to sell, which is a big shame. Because, don't get me wrong, there was some good arcade conversions, and that were probably more down to the talents of the programmer or programmers, the artists, the graphic artists. Gaming is like anything. You're going to have people who are better at certain things than others. I suppose there'd be little tricks that they could find, ways around something, that the computer were capable of doing, and they could, trick the computer into doing things and make it look better. There were all kinds of things like that. But yeah, it's a shame, because a lot of the time they just weren't up to standard. And like I said, as a gamer, you were kind of let down. But at the same time, what other choice did you have? And you basically had to make do with what you had. But obviously, I suppose you could have took it back to the shop, got a refund.
Yeah, good luck with that. They usually gave another copy of the game, didn't they? Yeah. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, well, yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. Can I have my money back? No.
But I suppose this could lead on to something else to do with 8-bit, which was copying, which was which was rife. And a lot of the time, you would given chance, you would find a copy of a game rather than pay full price for it. But yeah, I know that programmers since have remade games or enhanced older games to make them a little bit better. There's a Ghosts and Goblins update for the Commodore, isn't there? There's a R-Type remake for the Amstrad. Looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's meant to be way better than the original conversion that came out.
Yeah. I think the original was a Spectrum port, was it? If I'm not mistaken, I think they just lazily ported it from the Spectrum.
that was it. I mean, we're jumping about all over it, but that's because we're just doing it. If we were a bit more structured, obviously, we try and stage it, but it's just things that are coming to us. And I just want to go back to what you just said there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the problem with the Spectrum and the Amstrad was there was a lot of lazy ports on the Spectrum to the Amstrad. Hell, there were even lazy ports on the Spectrum to the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
And you said just to save time and get things out quickly and hit targets and meet deadlines. And as you said quite rightly, there was just a bottom line: get it out quickly. And sometimes that got in the way of actually producing the best product at the end of the day.
Yeah, it did.
Now, going back to our old friend Smash TV here, I'm glad I've got this in here. That's good, isn't it? Yeah. I appreciate some people may not know what I'm showing up, so they might be listening to this. But you see, we talk about conversions. This here is going to be an awful lot different to other conversions. Now, yes, there's going to be the graphical one because it's a Spectrum, so it's going to be slightly different. But this version is different to the Commodore 64 version, which would be different to the Amstrad version, which is different to the Master System version, which is different to the Super Nintendo version. And that was it. So you might find, for example, and I don't think it's going to be the case in unfortunately, Smash TV's case, this might be the best conversion of Smash TV there was, even though it came out on different systems. It's not, because the Super Nintendo one is by far and away the definitive version of that. But say if you took something like Chase HQ, and I know this, I played this across all three systems, the Spectrum version is regarded as one of the best games on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
The Amstrad version is regarded as possibly the best game on the Amstrad. The Commodore 64 version is a steaming pile of poo. Because the Commodore 64, first of all, wasn't very good at doing 3D races, but there is absolutely no way whatsoever that game should have been so bad. But it was. It was terrible. It really was. So you might find that on one system it's a very, very good version of the game, and on another system it's a really, really bad version. You think, how has that happened? But it wasn't chances are it may not have been the same team that were working on that version that worked on that version.
Yeah.
And you've got to cram in a 3D arcade racer. I mean, we've joked about it before previously. I think like Hard Driving and Stun Runner, which again, for people who don't know what those games are, they're 3D. Hard Driving's a 3D driving simulator, and then Stun Runner is a 3D futuristic sort of fast-paced racing game based in the future. You ever saw those games were in the arcade, and you think, how on earth is somebody going to stick that onto a Spectrum or an Amstrad or a Commodore 64? Why bother? Why even bother? But of course, somebody somewhere may have wanted it. I've not come across anybody who's met anybody who's done that. And you mentioned quite rightly about taking shortcuts on programming. Because a lot of them would do that. If you look at, say, you'll know this from the Commodore 64 version of Power Drift, for example.
Yeah.
Now you know what the arcade game looked like. It was, I think was it a Super Scaler, wasn't it?
Super Scaler, yeah.
Yeah. Which is a very sort of advanced arcade system, which I know nothing about, other than it's a name. And the Commodore 64 was never ever going to produce this 3D, fast-paced driving, tilting, moving, going up over hills and platforms and all sorts. So it was never going to emulate that. So they didn't. They'd have kept it very basic, very simple, simulated all the jumps and the runs around and whatever. And what you end up with is a pretty damn playable version of the game.
It is,
if you put the two together, some people might go, well, the cars look about the same, but that's about it. But they thought, well, there's no point in trying to do this. I mean, I played the Amiga version of that. It's confusing as anything because it doesn't quite get the scaling right on it. So it looks quite messy. It really looks quite messy. It looks quite close to the arcade, but it's not, the C64 version is far superior to that.
It is. I think they've got the track layouts correct. But like you said, they've scaled back, all the fancy bits. But yeah, it is one of the better races on the Commodore 64. It's Power Drift.
And again, talking about that, certain systems did certain things better.
Yeah.
So, you know, as we said, you said it's one of the better races. The Commodore 64, as you said before, is not regarded as a particularly good system for 3D races. But if you want a horizontal shoot 'em up, it's had hundreds of those.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hundreds of those.
It did. It was really good at doing those. You know, like I said, Nemesis, and its follow up Salamander, Armalite. There's countless in there.
Iridium.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Silky smooth, very fast. Brilliant game. But yeah, it just shows the potential of the Commodore 64. But as you said earlier, sometimes you just get stinkers and you think, well, where did that come from? Who's programmed that?
But also as well, and this is, you know, there's so many things from this era that we probably will miss quite a bit out. We may not get to all of it, I don't know, but we'll see how we get on. But there was, you know, these are the full price games. These are the games you pay your big bucks for: $7.99 to $9.99 on the Spectrum, $9.99 Commodore, $7.99 to $9.99 Amstrad. If you look at the disc version, because there were disc versions of these systems as well. Spectrum plus 3. There was the Commodore 64 disc drive, and there was the Amstrad 464 one. 6128, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got a disc drive built into it.
Yeah.
They might cost you a bit more and they might load a bit quicker, but generally speaking, more or less they were the same game. There wasn't a lot of difference between the two on that. No. So, you know, you weren't just limited to playing tank games, but also there were budget games as well. So you had people making cheap games, which in some cases were exactly what they were. You paid what you got what you paid for. You might have paid $1.99 for it, but you can guarantee it was probably worth about $1.99. But some of these budget games were actually very, very good, and in some cases better than a lot of full price releases. And of course, what the big software houses realised towards the end of, you know, once we got towards the end of the 80s, where the 8-bit systems were beginning to die out, lose popularity, become old technology. You had the rise of the NES and then the Master System coming through, and we were on the verge of the 16-bit era anyway, because you had the 16-bit home systems, Amiga and ST. All of a sudden, playing games off tape was old technology. So they basically re-released all the big titles at budget range and try and give the old market a shot in the arm, just to try and milk as much as they could do at the end of it. And it just, you know, just vast numbers of people programming for different levels and different things, and that's why you know people full set consoles, don't they? Full set. You're never going to full set an 8-bit system, are you? You're never going to. No chance, because some games came out in so limited numbers.
Yeah,
there's no definitive list for it for any of them, I don't think. And we are literally talking for each machine thousands, aren't we?
Yeah. Easily. I mean, a lot of you see, there's a lot of games that were basically coded in, you know, in somebody's bedroom, and they released them on their own label. Technically, they're classed as, you know, Commodore games, Commodore releases, but you know, your chances on finding any are pretty slim. And some of the software houses, you know, that might release games in small numbers, so you know, finding those is pretty hard. So, like I say, a full set for any microcomputers, it's an impossible task.
It's a hard task to undertake, and you end up with literally hundreds of them, and you get you'll get nowhere near it. You'll get nowhere near it, but that's it.
Subsets are possible, which a lot of people do. In the 8-bit scene,
you do a lot of subsets.
I do a load of subsets. You know, the most popular one being the Hit Squads, which were released by Ocean.
Don't say that. I'm going to go buy some more in a minute. That was a Hit Squad game as well. Smashed.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah. They never come into much handy, that game. I never held it so much in my entire life. That one. I could have picked a better game to use an example, but yeah, that's it. But again, with the hit squads, you talk about subsets and getting complete sets, and a lot of people who watch this, some people we know, have been through absolute merry hell to get hold of a full set for a certain system. It's some of these games cost hundreds of pounds now.
Yeah, they do.
It's crazy.
It can be quite expensive to get yourself a full set. Definitely.
Divorce and all sorts of arguments, and yeah. We're not having a holiday this year. I have to buy Skull and Crossbones on the Amstrad, or the Addams Family, or Lethal Weapon, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's strange. We talk about that with the hit squad. We don't want to talk about hit squads too much because that'll just would detract from everything else. But some hit squads on different systems are worth more than others.
Yeah,
like the C64 Terminator 2 hit squad is worth about 5 times less than the Spectrum. And if I tell you the C64 versions are both about 20 quid, it gives you no idea of how much the Spectrum version is.
Yeah. Castle Master's another example. That's not really that expensive on the C64. Getting it on the Spectrum, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, and I've got the big box version of Castle Master, which is worth about 5 quid. But somebody wants a tiny little, tape version of it, will happily pay about 15 times more than that just to have it, and more probably. So we've covered, here, there, and everywhere as we thought we were going to do. So, given that the 8-bit systems eventually passed away and died out early 90s. What did you move on and forget about it, or did you still have an interest in it after that, or why are we still sitting here 30 years after that talking about 8-bit games? There must have been a reason for you to keep hold of them or keep an interest in them.
Well, I moved on to the Amiga from the C64, and I did it pretty much really without any thought to the Commodore. The Commodore basically were shifted to one side. And like I said, my interest then moved on to the Amiga, and I've kind of been like that really up to maybe, 10 years ago, say. I've been moving on to a new system and then just shoving that one aside. Not even keeping hold of it, neither, just getting rid. But then, it's, I don't know, it's you look back and then that nostalgia kicks in, and then you think, I remember that game. YouTube's played a big part in it as well. Obviously, thinking, I remember that game. Typing it in search bar on YouTube, looking at it, thinking, wow, I remember playing that. I'd have to play that again. And then looking on eBay and then realizing, actually, I could get it again. So yeah, it's it got to the point where, although I'm still into modern gaming, I wanted to reclaim my childhood, the games from my childhood, and that's what I started doing. But it's nice. I think it's compared to when I was collecting the PS2. I didn't have as much love for the PS2. I really only collected because it was cheap. But to be honest, now when I'm collecting the Commodore 64 games, not just Commodore, but the range of them, Spectrum and Amstrad, and picking up games that bring a lot of nostalgia back to me. It's a nice feeling, and it's, to be honest, when you've got them all lined up as well on your shelves, they do look nice. Certain publishers kept all the covers nice and uniform, and they really do look nice, all lined up together. But it's just a sense of satisfaction knowing you've got those games. And yeah, it's a shame because I wish, like hindsight, I wish I would have kept all my original stuff, that isn't my original piece. But no, I've had to reclaim them all back. and you know, be it through um, eBay and other sources, gaming shops, and even gifts. So it's all helped me along the way to build up my collection again.
That's it.
Um, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
just nice to have them back in my collection.
Yeah, I mean, when I started, recollecting, and I thought about this today actually, in anticipation. I didn't do any research because that'd be
Mm.
stupid. Wouldn't it? I didn't get that far, because that would just be too prepared for us, wouldn't it? We don't do things like that.
Yeah.
I thought about it. I thought, well, when I first started collecting, recollecting retro stuff, because my journey, you know, you can go back and listen to it. You got your Desert Island. We'll
Mm.
put a link to our Desert Island Games episode in
Yeah,
here, because you and I talked a lot about 8-bit in that,
yeah,
and that'll be good if you want to go into more detail. And my gaming journey, I'll stick that one when Rob interviewed me. So I'll stick those in the links below, just for reference. So I don't want to cover that and get too far into it. But I didn't have much at all. I had nothing until an Amiga. I had a VCS, somebody mentioned at the start, and an Amiga, and then I bought my own PlayStation, and that was it. My gaming journey is very patchy. So when I started recollecting again, what I wanted was, because I never had one before, and I played it once as a kid, was a Commodore 64.
mm.
So when I first started doing it, the bastion of common sense in this household, which is Mrs. Bear, said, "What are you buying that for?" First of all, I bought an N64 at a car boot sale for a fiver. What you bought that for? I never had one. Well, what do you want it now for? Because I want one now. And here we are 15 years later, and it's like, go and
Yeah,
buy that. Why haven't you bought that? Why haven't you bought one of those? So okay, it's completely come full circle. But I wanted to get a Commodore 64, so that's one of the first things I did. I never actually had one, and I wanted to buy one, and I saw a lot on eBay, as you said, and I got stacks of stuff with it. I mean, it was only about a 50 quid lot, but I mean, I got a Commodore 64. I got about 3 data cassettes to go with it, and a load of games. And there's a load of games. I'm not joking. There
yeah,
must
yeah,
have been over about 100, 150 in there or something like that. So for 50 quid back in 2008, this was. And then Mrs. Bear and her mum bought me another Commodore 64 for Christmas following year, and that was like fantastic. And for me, you're absolutely right. It's nostalgia. I might not have had the nostalgia that you did,
mm.
because you had those things, but I had the nostalgia there that these sort of things made me happy. They give me that nice feeling inside. And now I've got all three. I've now got I've got the 64, I've got the Amstrad, I've got Spectrum. We've got Spectrums coming out in my ears. We've got the ZX81, the 48K, the Spectrum Plus, 48K Plus, and then the 128K plus two. And then collected games and just bought games for them. And the thing
yeah,
was, um, it was so cheap. I thought, 5 years ago, nobody was collecting this stuff. Nobody would talk about 8-bit
no,
stuff. And like you said, you pushed it aside to move on to the Amiga. And that was when I got the Amiga. That was it. I completely forgot about all that. And like you see, you get nostalgic for it, and you see things like, I'll just type that in and have a look at that and think, oh, wow, you can get this for this price here and all this. So, um, 5 years ago when I first started thinking, I thought, well, maybe I should start buying some of this stuff, because it seemed
yeah,
to be quite ready, because nobody seemed to be collecting it. And I think it was after probably, lockdown's got a lot to answer for a lot of this stuff.
yeah,
Lockdown has got
yeah,
a hell of a lot to answer for why people end up not just talking about games like we do, other things that they've rediscovered or took up what they've done for it. Lockdown. Um, it was done for a reason. I do appreciate that. But it just rekindled interest that people may have had long-standing ones or things they've forgotten lay dormant. And
yeah,
I bought a load of 8-bit stuff during that time, but loads of Spectrum, added loads of Spectrum games, and just kept going and kept going and kept going, and now built this wonderful, wonderful thing. And again, so many of the games from I play back then on my friends'
yeah,
systems I can actually have for myself now, and I apply that to anything like that's what the N64 and things like that. I didn't have things. I appreciate those games at the same level now. And I think it's great that even here we are now, after 30 years after pretty much the end of 8-bit tape systems came about, you have a thriving homebrew
yeah,
market. Now, when I say homebrew, again, explain to people what that means. basically going back to where things were 40 years ago, with people coding programs at home in their bedrooms or their offices or whatever, and churning out brand new games 40 years later for 40-year-old systems.
Yeah.
And this goes back to what we talked about earlier, Sean, about conversions and timescale. Actually, now having the time to
Yeah.
work on a game, to do it justice, and the games now for these systems, and I'm not talking about the Spectrum Next, which is enhanced.
No. No.
For the original hardware, for the original Spectrums and Commodore 64s and Amstrads, people now are turning out games of immensely high quality because
Yeah.
they've got time to sit down and explore how to program these things correctly and actually
Yeah.
churning out quality software, which if you'd done it back then would have blown people's socks off.
Yeah. God, yeah. It'd be amazing if, like I say, if some of these homebrew coders could recode some of those old games and show how it could be done, But on their own, coding their own games, like I said, the standard of them is phenomenal, and even some are replicating mobile games, like where you make a chain of three, whatever it is, like Candy Crush, them type of games.
Yeah.
I think Vegetables Deluxe is one of those type of games on the Commodore 64 by Cytronic. Endless Runners as well. They're doing them, and they look amazing. They really do.
I've got to say, right at the very, very end of that, I remember some games that came out the C64 right at the very end of its life. Games like Mayhem in Monsterland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
To look at that and compare to a C64 game from, say, 2-3 years previously, it's a world apart.
Yeah.
And the reason is because at that time people weren't making games to come on 64. So, okay, well, we've got to put this game out, so let's spend some time on it and really dig into the system and get the best out of it.
Best out of it, yeah.
Yeah,
they did. Just a quick note on, like, if anybody does want to start collecting 8-bit, it's still relatively cheap. Game wise, you can still pick up, games for £2 or £3, decent games as well. So it is accessible, to get into. Don't think that, because it's that old, that prices are sky high. Don't get me wrong, that it still is, but the majority of them are still very accessible, very affordable.
Yeah.
And not to mention that I know a lot of people just concentrate 8-bit as Spectrum, Commodore, and Amstrad, but you've got all kinds of others. You've got the Acorn Electron, Oric, Dragon 32, TI-99. Sedex Tetley's one of his favourite computers, Texas Instruments.
That's it, yeah.
So, there's a plethora of systems.
A plethora? Wow. I thought that was a hat. But there's the MSX as well, which came out. There was Dragon 32, there was a Dragon 64 as well, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. You can log on to all the, I'm going to say eBay, other auction sites are probably available. But just typing those in, and even say a couple of quid. I mean, you could probably buy games. Really, if you want to start a collection and work from, you can get stuff. As Sean says, 2-3. You probably get stuff cheaper than that.
Yeah,
it will be the stuff that's readily available and quite common, but you won't have to pay a huge amount for it.
No.
It depends what people want to do. I mean, if you've got this nostalgia, think, oh yeah, I remember those from back years ago. I want to start collecting hit squads. Good luck to you. You're going to need a very hefty wallet, but that's it. And it's one of the joys of anything. I always think about this. If you think about collecting for, people want to go say collect Super Nintendo or pick Super Nintendo out of the air. I want to get Mario. I want to get Zelda. I want to get the well, everybody wants to pick those games up and what have you. But the thing is, they've held their value. I know that you log some obscure 8-bit titles and whatever, and you but there's so many you've never even heard of or seen before or whatever, because there's just thousands out there, and it's a great thing to dip your toes into, and it wouldn't cost you a huge amount of money. Plus the fact as well that you can buy yourself a C64. If you want to get in the world of Commodore 64, you buy yourself a C64 Mini, one of these systems that have been put together, which is basically an emulation device.
Yeah.
And you can, and I shouldn't be telling you this, but you didn't hear it here. If you did, my name's Rollercore. You could put a USB and flash a load of games onto it and things like. All the systems do that. All the little minis and do it. But it's very easy. I mean, you don't even need a Commodore 64, but depends how authentic you want to go. It's something which is old, but it's not going to go away, and there is a real interest in it now, and I think it's great. You got to remember, this is where everything started. We wouldn't be here having this conversation if it wasn't for these systems back then.
No.
We owe a great deal to these systems and the people who worked on them, and the way they were supported, because they fall flat in their face. Nobody would have bothered. Don't forget, none of these systems were created with the purpose of making games for them. That's what you got to remember.
They won't bother.
No.
Yeah.
Mr. Sinclair was not very happy when people started making games for the Spectrum. He didn't want it. He wanted to be a home computer for home computing. Of course, what the first thing to say, try and make some games for it.
Yeah.
Crudely designed ZX chess game, which is literally like a grid with zeros and ones on it to simulate chess pieces.
I mean, CBM is Commodore business machines.
Yeah.
But your CBM 64, what everybody uses now is for games. So, it was initially intended as a business machine.
But you could say you consume it in slightly different ways. You want to go down the emulation route, then there is an option available to you. If you are stuck in the wall like me, then you'll go and get yourself a proper system and do it the proper way around. It just depends on how you do it. There are some fantastic games which people may not have discovered before, may never know about. They may have played remakes of them. What I can think of immediately springs to mind is Rygar, which came out on the Wii.
Yeah.
I didn't know Rygar came out on the Wii.
I didn't.
I'm a huge Wii collector for some reason. I haven't got it, but I mean, I remember that game coming out back then, which I always get confused with Rastan for some reason. But we talk about Outrun, we talk about Afterburner, we talk about Golden Axe, we talk about Operation Wolf, we talk about Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and all variants of these games, official or unofficial, all came out for these systems, and people consumed them in great amounts, and
they did.
They deserve to be remembered. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a nostalgic and passionate thing, and I always say to people, just give it a go. Just give it a go. You might not like it. If you don't like it, great. You've had a go at it. Don't dismiss it. It's something which is worth going to. And I want to wear my Dizzy T-shirt. You say popular characters like this, and that's a very I'd like to say that's a Spectrum version, but it's also quite easy to be the Commodore 64 version as well, because that's the example. That probably was a Spectrum version, which then got straight ported to the C64. Cracking soundtrack with it, and let's not invent that. So, I think we'll just gone past an hour, so I think that's probably enough for people to listen to you and me rabbiting on them for a bit. We would love to do more of these, wouldn't we? We would love to do more of these.
Absolutely, yeah, we would.
And what we'd like to do is to sort of be a bit more structured, but to try and focus on different things. We like to try and focus on different systems, different genres of games, or whatever. And we'd like your contributions to this. If you've enjoyed listening to me and him rabbit on for an hour, and you want to hear more of us, God forbid, or if you want to come and join in, that would be great. And we're appealing to all people, aficionados of 8-bit. If that's your sort of thing, if you want to come on and spend an hour or so of your time with me and Sean just talking about some of your memories, some of the games, some of your experiences, you may have programmed for the systems back then. You may have, and again, to people, this is quite a popular thing now with people who programmed on these systems and designed the games and the layouts, even marketed them or worked for the software houses. People like that are now being, sort of rediscovered X number of years later, and they're on the the gaming event talk show circuits, and they've got their own YouTube channels. If people like that are watching this, or so you might want to come on and talk about it, we would love to hear from you. We really would do. And I think we'd like to get a few more people on who like these things like you and me do.
There's plenty of them. So
I'm sure there is. There's lots of
Yeah.
old people around. That's what it is. Yeah. And more important, if you're a young person who've got into this, it does
Yeah.
happen. It does
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
You know, you want to come on and talk about why you're so interested in this. We'd love to hear from you. There's a lot of ways we can go with this. This is just, first of all, just to see, you know,
Pilot episode.
if we could do it, we could do an hour and 5 minutes, which we've done now nearly, without sort of getting to the point where we have nothing to talk about. We could have gone on for ages, but
Yeah.
but we don't want to overload too much. But yeah,
Dipped us
we'd like,
toes.
we'd like to make this a regular thing. And if you want to join us, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, it's going to be me and him. Sooner or later, we'll start talking about Trolley Wally and other games which you may never have heard of before, and get really obscure. And it'll just be me and him talking to each other for nobody's benefit. And it's taken us about a year to get this far, hasn't it? It's taken us about a year to get this. It's taken us a long time. And I would also like to say very, very quickly at the end, thank you very much to Mrs. Bear who put together that little introduction as well.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bear. She worked very hard on that, and I think she was worried we're never going to use it. But we've done it now, and we will continue to use it. So no, thank you. We thank you very much for that. As always, mate, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Yep. And you, mate, as well.
And I'm glad we've actually got this one out. It might be the only one. Who knows? We'll know. So
we'll see.
Yeah, but we hope other people join in. Thanks everybody for watching as well. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear from you. There may be some more only 8-bit coming very, very soon. We do hope so. And if we do, we will see you right there for that. And like I said, if you want to get involved, do get in touch with us. But for Sean and myself, the Retro Bear, thanks so much for watching. And we will see you again soon. Bye-bye.